What's up, everybody? Welcome into the Backliners podcast. It's Aggro and PBM with you here today. No Barracuda. He's quite busy. I have also been quite busy, so I apologize for the lack of episodes lately. Been hard at work and had a lot of family stuff. There's so much to do when you have a kid, Mike. Like, as I'm sure you know, it's so much work having a child that you want to take to do in that, to go on a hay bale ride and all that kind of stuff, which is legitimately very fun. But no one told me it would take up so much time,
No, I feel the same way. Like, having to babysit Lucas every day is really a struggle. No, it's trade-off theory, like, you're really busy, Bear's really busy, I'm doing nothing.
Well, you're looking after Lucas, right? I
guess so, yeah.
And that's a fate how many of us could really handle, That's something to think about. Needs
an army. It really does.
Yeah, needs a whole group. Thanks for hopping in and being our Barry stand-in, Mike. It's been a while since we've had an episode in general, to the point where I was gonna say we were gonna talk about Sobek and Rod joining. I don't know that we definitely haven't talked about Hercules and Danzaburro's changes coming into Smite 2, and then a lot of big balance patches, which we can't obviously catch up on all of them, but one did just go live today that has some pretty significant changes, in particular to penetration, which I think will be good for us to talk about. But let's start with some of the gods, shall we? Let's start with Danzaburro, because he's at the top of the page that I opened. Danza feeling very similar, I think, to Smite 1, except for a very large change to the passive, which is now you can just spawn some clones whenever you basic attack an enemy. These clones last for 3 seconds. They deal 30% of your basic attack damage and take a whole bunch of increased damage. Clones have a 5% plus 0.25% per level chance of spawning a clone themselves, and they target the enemy that was hit when they were created. So if you've tuned in to any streams or been watching or playing, and all of a sudden you see a whole bunch of Danzaburros all over the battlefield, that is his new +1. A little out there, but very flavorful for the character's lore. What were your immediate thoughts on seeing this change, and how do you think it's been for him in practice, Mike?
I think it's a current nerf only because his gold was really good.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, I shouldn't even say that. I think it's just situational. Like, in combat, the clones don't feel too strong yet, which is like an easy change. Like, if they're not doing enough, it's really easy to just give them a little bit more damage. I think that actually happened once already, and they've been a little bit better for sure. They're really, really strong on objectives, though, which is kind of cool for him, because he was always almost like a hybrid. All the crit items that were fail not and stuff, they're kind of hybrid ability. I feel like he does really well with items like that, like a sort of hybrid auto attack build, which I think now that you can basically build intelligence items as well in Smite 2, there's a lot of potential for that. So him being able to do weird things with his build, or even build as a bruiser and be a jungler, or whatever role you want to play him in, and then also have good objective DPS is pretty cool. We've had plays where I think one Cyclone just straight up backdoored a Phoenix and the Titan to end the game, because you just spawned 10 little guys that are all hitting for 30 each, and it adds up a lot in those scenarios. So yeah, I was skeptical at first, but I think it's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's definitely one of the more visually impactful +1s. I don't know if it's as impactful as others in terms of actual gameplay, like you were saying, but
it feels fun to play.
It feels fun to play. It's the type of thing that makes you go, whoa, I want to try that, and try and get a whole bunch of little guys hitting an objective, like you were saying. So I'm a big fan. Definitely a little wacky, but that's the type of stuff I want to be doing. I want to be doing wacky stuff. Hercules, on the other hand, maybe more impactful in actual gameplay, but still pretty visually telling. Part of his new passive, he retains his old passive, but with lower stats. But now, whenever he hits an ability or activates his 3, he gains a stack. At 4 stacks, he enters an empowered state that immediately subtracts from his active cooldowns and provides additional strength, protections, and cleaving basic attacks for the duration. He gets bigger in this empowered state as well. I've always been a Hercules fan in Smite 1, one of my favorite gods to play. I'm sure you're with me in that. How do you think he's played in his addition to Smite 2 so far?
He feels good. I think he's kind of like he's kind of a timeless kit, I think, a little bit in terms of his feel. Like, he's just so smooth, and his abilities just feel so satisfying to hit. I think going big after you use all of your abilities is kind of visually like hitting a combo and like bouldering someone and then being like, holy crap, I'm going off, and then like you're actually big. Like, it's kind of a cool feeling. It's also really nice to just use kind of randomly. Like, I've seen solo laners do it a good bit, where you'll boulder kind of off cooldown to either like clear wave or trade, and then being able to get that like steroid to be able to like auto attack trade people as well, I think is really powerful. Yeah, I mean, I'm not gonna have anything bad to say about Herc. You can't get me to say anything bad about him. I love that little guy.
I'm right there with you. I love. I mean, I'm sure I've ruined a good amount of our viewers' arena games if you've had the pleasure or displeasure of having me on your arena team playing Hercules, just going for nothing but 2 blink combos. Having combat blink makes that significantly easier and more consistent, because you don't have to worry about getting put in combat. But it being combat blink adds some new tech. The Blink 2 was not always super popular because it was difficult to pull off, but now we've added an even more difficult 2 blink combo, where because it's combat blink and because Hercules 2 is a rolling deployable that spawns from him after his pre-fire started, it means that he can input it and then blink, and it becomes completely unreactable, but very risky to go for. Have you messed with it at all, Mike? I know I showed you this tech at one point.
I feel like no, but maybe. There was a play where I blinked and 2'd somebody. I don't remember the order I did it, though. I think the main issue is that you can't adjust, like, when you 2 blink, you can't adjust the, like, Y or X-axis. X-axis, smart. So if they move side to side, you, like, just own yourself on it. Whereas I feel like 2 blink backwards is a little bit easier, because you're able to just like flick your camera wherever you want. So I haven't done it a ton. I feel like it would be really good over walls if people don't know that I'm there. But yeah, it's definitely just something you got to play a lot and get used to if you want to use it.
All I'm saying is, when there's like an official match, imagine in Vegas someone pulls off the 2 blink, like, it's gonna go crazy. So might be worth.
The thing is, like, to warrant the risk, I feel like they'd have to not have beads,
right?
Or they need to have beads. Sorry. Because if they have beads and then you need them to not be able to react to it, and they get knocked up and then they like boosh beads it, then you're feeling good about that.
Right.
But if they don't have beads, I can just blink any way I want and I'll kill them.
Yeah, you're not wrong, but it is less cool. Have you thought about that?
No, I'm definitely hearing you on that. It is less cool, for sure.
Glad we're in agreement there. Hot tip for our listeners on the 2 then blink, like where you do the 2 and then the 180 and you blink away. It's much more consistent, like I said, with the combat blink. And a nice little tip that AJ gave me, actually, as he was the design point on Hercules getting transitioned over to Smite 2. If you just wait until you see the Earth pop up when you cast your 2, and then you immediately 180 and blink, then it's very, very consistent. Of course, you have to know that 2 is going to hit once it rolls out, but just hitting 2, waiting until you see the ground pop up for that first little instance, and then turning and using your blink is the tech. So there you go. Don't say I've never done anything for you, because it would be untrue. I've given you this very helpful tip that will probably make you at your game. You're welcome. All right, let's talk about Ra and Sobek then, shall we? Ra. He's just rawing it up, He's the same old Ra in a lot of great ways. His new +1 is on his 2 where after you activate it, basic attacking fires solar rays that deal magical damage. They pierce targets. They count as abilities and trigger ability effects. So if you have Soul Gem, for example, each basic attack from the two will give you a stack of Soul Gem. They will all proc Reaver, all of these types of things. We had a lot of debate internally about how this ability should work, and if it should be triggering ability effects on each basic attack. It has been less abusable than I expected, I think, but still feels pretty strong to me. What are your thoughts on Raw here, Mike?
I think it's cool. I'm just wondering where like the Braggy's Harp and the Kin's Raws are.
Yeah,
like that's how you abuse it, surely.
yeah.
Like, okay, think about it. Think about it. People play like, let's just use like Raw Athena. Okay, classic combo. Everyone's playing around that because you don't want to die to the snipe, right? So they're gonna beads that or something. But you build auto attack Raw, and they press tab and they see your build. They're like, I'm not beadsing that crap. What's this guy building? And then you just pop your 2 and you just whack them all and cleave them down in the taunt. That's got to be OP.
You swang on them. Yeah, maybe that is the play. I feel like I know Bobby tweeted some build that really looked like nauseating. Like it was like Shield of the Phoenix, Glad Shield, like all of this nonsense.
It's probably good, honestly.
It probably is pretty good. I will say that was not a build I tested internally, but maybe that is the play. We do have breaking news here in the chat that I think we should get to, Mike. Ron Jobert says, I'm going to jail tomorrow. I threw too many pennies in the well next door. Help. I don't know how exactly he's expecting us to help. Maybe he's just assuming that he's going to lose a case based on this tomorrow, and he needs some help forming his legal defense.
Give me a second here. Let me look into this.
Okay. Hundreds of dollars of pennies.
Yeah, so I checked my bank account. If your bail is under $13.70, I can get you out.
$13.70, correct?
Yes, $13.70.
Well, he might need it because he threw all his money in pennies into this well.
I can transfer it to pennies if you need it. It's going to take 5 business days, though. So if we can have some wiggle room
there, he's going to jail. But
yeah, no, he would just have to spend a week there. It's not that bad.
And it should be a nice weekend, right? Like,
yeah, and you don't.
A good time to do it.
Most people, like me personally, I go 3 weeks without showering. So if he's worried about the whole soap situation, you just don't shower for a week.
You just hold off on that. It's fine. Okay. Yeah. Ron says right, of course. So I think he's feeling better about it. Ron, I would say Your Honor, I really needed my wish to come true. And then the judge will say, what was your wish? And you have to go, well, I can't tell you because then it won't come true. And they can't legally make you say it, right? They can't legally make you say it. Oh, God, he's got a life sentence execution in June. That's a long time.
You can't get me to say Your Honor. I don't think it's going to happen. I don't think, like, I don't know them. I don't know that respect is warranted.
What would you call a judge if you were in court?
What's their first name? Like, yo, Frank, here's what happened, you know?
Yo, Frankie.
Yo, Frank, you see what happened was.
Yeah, that's that could work. Maybe they don't like you. Maybe, like, it's kind of like a Chick-fil-A situation where they're just where everyone's told, like, you have to say Your Honor, but no one really likes it. Like, when I go to Chick-fil-A, I don't like being on the receiving end of me saying thank you and them going my pleasure, right? No one likes it.
No, don't say it to me.
Right? No. Don't say that to me. Maybe it's a similar situation. I personally would like it if I were at Chick-fil-A and I said thank you and they said go away or like anything else. So maybe it's similar.
You pull up to order and they just say, don't you have something better to do?
Like, I'm like, really, yeah, what are you, a cop? And they say, you have to call me Your Honor. And then I throw hundreds of dollars of pennies into a well next door and then get a life sentence.
Perfect.
Something about Ron's story isn't adding up, man. I don't know. Maybe he deserves to go to jail. That's all I'm thinking. Okay, Sobek. Classic transition for us. So anyways, Sobek, he's in the game. You're a long time Sobek hater, notorious even. I would say. Sobek gets 2 new +1s. His 3 Sickening Strike now applies a disease that can spread between enemies. I feel like that's a funny way for us to word that, but I'm not going to expand on that bit anymore. Sickening Strike's cooldown is lowered by the amount of enemies hit by the initial strike, up to 4. And his ultimate, Lurking in the Waters, can now execute. He now executes enemies low health, scaling the HP threshold with the length of his charge. Sobek is rewarded for kills, execute or otherwise, on enemy gods with his ultimate. Sobek permanently gains 25 max health each time his ultimate kills an enemy god and gains a burst of healing. There was a lot of controversy about the Sobexecute on the ultimate. I think it has died down a little bit since Sobek's release, that I haven't seen too many more complaints about it. Starting with the execute portion of these changes, what are your thoughts there?
Yeah, I think people are trolling on the execute thing a lot. Like, if you build damage on the character, the damage is going to outvalue the execute. And if you are hitting a backliner and you're a tank, very often, like if you full charge a Sobek out and you do 800 of a carry's health, which is what it would hit for late game at level 20, that's going to be more than a quarter of their health anyways, in most cases. Maybe not anymore in the most recent patch, but it'll be right around there. So I feel like people were overvaluing the execute a little bit. I do think it got a little bit better with the most recent patch, which again, I assume we'll get to later.
Mm-hmm.
And then, yeah, I think the disease thing is pretty cool. It doesn't seem like the damage is... If the damage on it was too high, I think it would feel a little frustrating because a lot of players may like incidentally hit you with it and apply a lot of damage to you that maybe you don't want to take. But I think where it's at, it's kind of nice. It's like a good little bit of damage. I feel like thematically it fits him like pretty well as also.
It's a sickening strike,
so yeah.
right? Like the strike sickens.
Yeah. Yeah. No, he's really strong. He basically, I mean, he gets buffed in many ways in Smite 2 in comparison to his Smite 1 version, so he's really, really strong, for sure.
Yeah, I was going to ask, I mean, it's basically, I will admit, impossible for me to keep up with the rapid changes that we're making and what is in development, like, internally. It was always a struggle, even when we were patching once every 3 weeks. Now, with multiple balance updates a week, it's literally impossible for me to keep up with it all. He's been received as he's pretty strong? Because we felt like he was pretty strong internally, for sure.
He's definitely one of, if not the best characters in the game. Yeah, I think he basically lost nothing and then gained a ton. And then I also kind of lost my mind yesterday because I didn't realize a Season 11 change that he carried over was that he can also go through walls. So, like, there's nothing that counters him anymore because he also added the thing where, like, you can turn your camera, like, while you're one-in, and you're, like, in that animation where you actually, like, grab onto them. But I think you also finish that animation quicker. So, like, all of the counters to Sobek of, like, walls being good against him, those are a little less threatening about, like, to him. And then also your ability to CC him after he plucks is also reduced. So he pretty much can always get into his ult if he wants to. So, like, you can't really punish him for plucking in, and you can't really set up kills on him or make his game harder with walls. So he kind of just does whatever he wants at every stage of the game. And then if you play tank versus tank on Sobek, like, let's say you're in solo lane, that's when the execute gets a lot of value, right? Because if you're both tanky and he has to stand on his 3 and he, you know, pokes you down or whatever, eventually he can get you into kill range or set up a gank or whatever. So yeah, he's OP.
Yeah, that plus now he can build Bluestone in solo and just have a lot of proc damage because now you've got it on your disease spread, on all 4 of your abilities, you can proc it. I was happily abusing Bluestone Sobek solo with, like, Glad Shield and just, like, full tank, but Shield with the Phoenix and Glad Shield, and just felt like I was, like, proc damage owning everybody. Probably still good to be going, like, Sands or Conduit, as it always has been, but I don't know.
I was thinking, I don't know what people have been doing. I know people buy Warriors X a good bit. I don't know if that's a Sobek item, but yeah, I think all those proc items that you named are all very good on him for sure.
Yes. Sobek, definitely a good example of a god that when you have 130 characters and you're used to playing with Sobek for 10 years, it's like, I don't really, the value doesn't really seem to be there. And then he obviously gets a lot of buffs coming to Smite 2, of course, but I think that in a reduced cast world, and because of the item store changes, I think favoring him, lack of relics favoring him, and the stat shifts that we've done to the overall game, kind of favoring making his passive even stronger, all combine into being like, whoa, this character does a lot and has a lot going for him in his kit. That's my general thought, that he will probably continue to feel pretty strong for a while, because back in the day he was like he was always valuable in high level play. It felt like in the early days of competitive Smite that there was always like the threat of a Sobek pick, whether it be the 2-1-2 meta where he was a really good kill setup support in lane, or the season 2 like Sobek Willix days type of thing. I was actually thinking about Sobek Willix a lot like 2 weeks ago when League quarterfinals were happening for Worlds, because doesn't it feel like Nocturne Orianna, doesn't it have like Sobek Willix vibes to you, where it's like you think like, oh, it's this 2-champ combination that they synergize so well and it feels unstoppable and OP because some teams were doing it and it looks really good, and then you get to like a thing like a world championship and everyone is just like playing tighter and more wary of what's coming at them, and then you just like get stuck in this loop of, oh, well, this one team was doing well with Nocturne Orianna or Sobek Willix, and it's like actually just not that good.
Yeah, I feel like Nocturne's win rate has been absolute trash.
So bad. That champ is so bad. I'm so convinced. Okay, that was a little tangent there. Yes, Disease doesn't proc Bluestone because we were running it a lot internally and being like, hey, getting a guaranteed Bluestone proc like on it's bees, right? Like we made bees eventually like not be able to proc as strong from AMC, and we ran through a lot of the same arguments that we did with bees back in the day, because it turns out just bouncing damage across a team fight usually pretty good. Okay, before we move on to the most recent balance update, got to tell you about our brand new sponsor for this week. If you've been watching the podcast and not listening, then you probably see it right underneath our beautiful faces here. It's Turtle Beach. Today's episode is brought to you by Turtle Beach, the #1 brand in gaming headsets and accessories. Their new Gen 3 Stealth 700 headset picks up so much crystal clear sound, it's basically cheating. I heard a mosquito in the game the other day and started swatting at my screen. The point of this is me convincing you guys that I thought there was a bug in my room, which, you know, there is sometimes. You'll hear every footstep, every reload, every enemy sneaking up on you like they're stomping through your living room in tap dancing shoes. Their headsets are also so freaking comfortable, you'll feel like you're wearing a marshmallow cloud pillow on your head. I feel like I could just sleep in mine because they feel so amazing. And best of all, the Stealth 700 has the industry's first ever cross-play dual wireless transmitter system. That means you can seamlessly switch between your consoles and PC with just a click of a button. And it gets better. While being connected to your console, the Stealth 700 can connect with your phone for music streaming or taking calls at the same time. Listen to your favorite songs while gaming, all done with the Stealth 700. Whether you're a casual gamer or haven't touched grass in weeks, Turtle Beach has the right headset for you. For a limited time only, our listeners get 10% off their entire order when you use code BACKLINERS at turtlebeach.com. That's 10% off your order at turtlebeach.com/backliners. I'm wearing the pair of Stealth 700s that they sent me right now. They are very comfortable. This is my first wireless headset, and my ability to move around without having to take my headset off has been really, really nice. I'll also give a shout out because I will say, in the interest of full transparency, that I did have an issue a little bit with this headset let Turtle Beach know, and they're sending a replacement on the way right now immediately. Super clean, super easy, and big shout out to them for that. So great customer service, very comfortable headset, and the ability to walk around without a wire. Awesome. Plus, they have a ton of battery life. It's an insane 80-hour battery life with quick charge, so you rarely have to think about charging it. I've had it for like 2 weeks now. I think I've charged it like twice, and just when I'm done for the night, put it on the side, charge it up. Haven't had any problems at all. Turtle Beach doesn't just have amazing headsets. They have every gaming accessory you could ever want, and they're all high quality at prices that don't break the bank. From flight and racing simulators to controllers, keyboards, and My Turtle Beach is the ultimate gaming cheat code. So, get the ultimate immersive gaming experience with Turtle Beach today. For a limited time only, head to turtlebeach.com and use code BACKLINERS for 10% off your entire order. That's 10% off your order at turtlebeach.com with promo code BACKLINERS. Big shout out to Turtle Beach. Happy to have them along on the show. All right, Mikey, let's talk the patch notes that just went live. If you're looking for these, you can check our Steam page. It's probably the best place to find them. That's where I found these. Or the Smite 2 Twitter account, of course. Some bug fixes as per usual. Ancient Fury increased the tower debuff duration from 120 seconds to 180 seconds. Ancient Fury's had a couple adjustments now. Do you think this changes your thoughts on if you'd prioritize an Ancient Fury late? You know, how does your team kind of approach, without giving too much away, like stacking golds and playing for Ancient Fury versus playing for Fire at different stages of the game?
You would never play for Fury over Fire, including this change. So I don't think it really matters for that at all. I think the big thing with it, honestly, for high level play, I shouldn't even say high level, for coordinated play, I would say, like if you're just in comms with people, the timing of when you take Ancient Fury is a lot easier to manage because you kind of know what people's back timings are and like when you can group and do something as 5. So the 2 versus 3 minutes isn't a huge change in that regard, unless like, you know, if like a god like Merlin came out, you know, that's like really hard to siege against, then the extra time I could see being very helpful there. I feel like it'll be way more valuable like when you're just queuing ranked, because I feel like the classic that happens all the time in ranked is that people get objectives, and instead of like backing and getting ready to push, everybody loves just like doing their farm and getting a buff and then backing late and then getting their item and then
all walking up one lane and not pushing any waves, like no waves.
Yes, and then somebody split pushes and then someone backs to go cover it, and then your whole Ancient Fury is gone. I feel like that type of thing should happen a lot less with this change. So I think that would be the bigger impact point that I would see.
Sure. Well, Fire Giant also gets nerfed in this update and makes it easier to take. Reduces the base health from 6,750 to 5,400, so about a 1,350 health reduction, and base prots go from 60 to 48. Fire Giant getting squishier, just been a little too tanky, I assume, has been the feedback that we've been receiving based on this change. Any thoughts there?
I haven't felt that way.
Fair enough.
So I mean, go off, you know, do whatever. I think I think to me, I think it's like questionable, but I also like just ripping it kind of. Like I respect the frequent like drastic updates. If it's really like a big problem, it's easy to swing back the other way. So I don't mind it.
Yeah, I think it's a good point. The balance team in general will always have misses, regardless of how much time we have to make a patch, right?
I don't even know that it's a miss, to be clear.
Sure.
My guess is that it's not, but who knows?
Right, and that's totally fair. And I do think that there will be more theoretical misses with how frequently we're patching, but I think, like you said, misses are less egregious when you don't have to wait 3 weeks for them to get fixed. When it can be fixed same week, it doesn't feel as bad. So I think that that's a good thing for sure. Huge change in this update. One of them, all gods have had their health per level increased by 15%. This is in large part due to a lot of the feedback that we've been receiving on time to kill being too quick, particularly in the late game. don't want to we don't want to get to 9.5 levels, of course, where everyone's really tanky, particularly early game. I think the early game lethality in Smite 2 has generally felt pretty good. This should not affect that by a whole lot, but by the time you get to level 20, it'll be a pretty noticeable difference. What are your thoughts on this change, Mike?
This is probably... maybe it is because of 9.5. This is the only change that I'm like, ooh, I don't really like that. And it's not because of, like, I think what you said about the early game, I think all of that feels good and is very true. I just think there's some characters, like, let's use like Anubis, for example, right? Like a character that kind of has to sit in place and just launch his damage at you. If you can't kill that guy, he kind of just insta-wins the team fight. And I feel like between his new passive and then something like this, I feel like it has a lot of potential to be problematic. And more importantly, I just think that damage items have gotten a lot of nerfing kind of like very frequently, including in this patch. So I think it's really the combination of the two things, like either damage nerfs on their items or increasing the level scaling HP. I think either of them could be good, but together I feel like it has potential to make games feel a little too stagnant. But again, it's all a guess, like theoretically, who really knows? Like that combined with the Fire Giant change, maybe it goes the other way, right? Like if you feel like you can kill Fire Giant earlier in the game, then you might get fights over there earlier as well, which would mean that like if you're fighting more frequently and the fights feel impactful, then your scaling is like a little bit less relevant because you're fighting at like level 15 instead of 20. So maybe the health doesn't feel all that important, but who knows?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I think that this is one of those where we will probably have to wait for a few weeks to really see the overall effect that this has on the game. I think for me personally, not speaking on behalf of the whole Smite 2 dev team or design team even, I personally think lower in a vacuum of at 10 everyone is so tanky that no one ever dies and every fight is 2 minutes long, and 1 is everyone dies to a stiff breeze, like in backline to backline combat, specifically in the late game. I am definitely before the 5. Like I prefer a faster time to kill on squishy versus squishy than a longer time to kill. And that's just my personal preference. I'm not saying I like it at 2, but I'm real comfy at 4 on that scale, I think that's generally where my preference lies. I think we've probably been at about like a 3 on that scale so far in Smite 2 if I had to gut check, try and like rank it along that scale. So I'm definitely on board with trying to dial it in a little bit. I think we've learned our lesson that while I still stand by the initial reasoning and direction for 9.5, we've also seen that it is not in the best long-term interest to have a game that feels like the 9.5. Once we settled after 9.5, 9.8 or so, when we kind of had it a little more dialed, I think that that's not what's in the best long-term interest of the game. I do not want those words taken out of context to say that 9.5 was a huge mistake that like killed Smite 1 or anything like that, because I truly don't think that's the case. I think we had to do something of 9.5's general direction with where community sentiment was at the time. I don't think it was perfect by any means, but I think that the decision to do something around that time in that direction was correct. But yeah, I think we've learned our lesson from it. That's a lot of caveats and qualifiers to just say it's good to have that experience to know what to look out for and what we like and what we don't like when it comes to sweeping TTK adjustments. All right, yeah, moving on from that. Not going to go over every single god nerf and buff, but this Amaterasu one feels pretty noteworthy. It's a big nerf, specifically to Int Amaterasu. Her AO1 loses a good amount of base intelligence buff as you rank it, plus 2% scaling. Her 2 gets cooldown increased by 2 seconds and loses 25% intelligence scaling on it. And the ultimate loses 10% int scaling per hit with 5% strength scaling per hit also going down. Ama been very, very dominant since she was released, in part due to some bugs that are now hopefully fixed. But Int Ama getting hit pretty hard here, Mike. Do you think that this takes her out of high-level play for the time being, just shifts her build, or do you think Int Ama is still the way to go?
No, she'll be fine. She's like, I kind of think of her and, like, if we were using Smite 1, I kind of think of Osiris this way as well, where, like, I just think their kits are so strong and so flexible to whatever build type is viable at that time. Like, I think I've seen people go auto attack build even before she's gotten her int scaling nerfs. Like, not only today, but I think she got some earlier on as well. So she's definitely totally fine. I do want to say, though, I think this change is really good, and something that I've been saying on stream, that if you think about it, with like Bacchus earlier in the year, because a lot of like his damage was probably a little bit too high off of his protection scaling at the start of the year, and that obviously got adjusted to where it is now, which I think feels good. It was kind of a very similar dynamic with Ama, where like you're scaling the thing that makes her tanky and what makes her do damage at the same time, because her 2 gives her damage mitigation off of int. So I think making that more of a trade-off with her abilities having a little bit, even if it's only like 5 or 10% more strength scaling, I think that kind of fixes that problem right away. Whereas if you go something like Conch, you get a little bit of damage mitt, and that feels good for her, and it doesn't feel bad to play against. But if you go every single intelligence item and suddenly you have like 30% mitigation, that feels a little tough to kill through.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's something, another lesson we're still in the process of learning, potentially, that I'm sure we will unlearn and then relearn again at some point. Chop gets buffed, woohoo, Fenrir gets nerfed, and the bite timing gets fixed on his ultimate to match Smite 1.
Thank God on that, by the way.
Yep, that was a change that was harder than we expected it to be, but we got there. Hades buff. I don't know what the scuttlebutt is around the Smite 2 community when it comes to Hades right now, Mike. But you know me, I'm a Hades truther. I always have been. I think this character is crazy in Smite 2. Like, just the ult change alone makes it insane.
They can't clear the wave, which doesn't make sense to me, how that could be true. You definitely don't one-shot the wave the way he did.
No.
Like, that is for sure true, but I feel like it's one of those things where they're, like, comparing it to how it used to feel in Smite 1, and they're like, oh, I should one-shot this wave. I don't. This character's trash. But yeah, his all-in is crazy. It's so good.
It's so good. Play Hades. I think he's nuts. You need less prots now in order to get your silence and fear duration scaled. You needed 150. Now you only need 125. I don't remember exactly what my Hades build was when I was spamming him like right after ranked release, but surely it's not too hard to get to 125 prots. Like little breastplate, little spirit robe, and then damage from there, something like that. Little void stone, 3 damage items, damage starter. That sounds awfully good to me. That's all I'm saying. Play some Hades. All right, let's talk about the penetration nerf, shall we? Piercing, which affects Totem of Death, Demonic Grip, and the Executioner. The penetration per stack went from 10% to 7.5%, but increased the stack count from 3 to 4. So now I believe that means you're ending up in the same spot? No, that can't be right. 7.5 times 4, 30. Ends up in the same spot. I'm so good at this.
I did the literal same thing you did.
Yep.
When I read it earlier today.
Yep. So ends up in the same spot, but just needs an extra stack in order to get there. And then the bigger one, I think, of course, is Shattering, which is a new effect that affects Obsidian Shard and Titan's Bane. Now you can't stack Obsidian Shard and Titan's Bane. That its passive is you gain 20% pen against all targets, and it does not stack with itself. I think this was a very necessary change, with there being no pen cap, percent pen cap in Smite 2. Just getting to be able to do true damage to, or near true damage to people, or in some cases actual true damage, was just too strong. I'm imagining that you're happy to see this change as a tank player as well.
Honestly, people didn't build it enough. I don't know why, because like we built it. We had games and scrims where we built it on literally 4 people, like everyone but me, and then I still had like 60% pen.
Yeah.
And people just didn't do it. I'm not sure why. Maybe they thought it wasn't good, or maybe it was too expensive. Yeah, I don't know. I think it all makes sense. I feel like the Obshard Titan's Bane one feels fine as well, because even if you were a hybrid character, you'd probably just rather pick which stat you like a little bit more. Like, let's say you're Amma, for example. If you scale a little bit more off int, you'd probably just rather just buy Obshard and then call it a day.
Mm-hmm.
Or, if you want your auto attacks to hit more, you can just buy Titans for the strength, whatever. And I feel like having to make that choice is completely fine. My only slight concern with it is I feel like Hunters kind of got hit, on the side there with the Executioner thing with the piercing, because I feel like Totem of Death was really like the very, very strong item of that bunch.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like it's a little bit harder for Hunters to get their uptime, and I don't think they've been particularly strong in general, really, since the initial 24/7 release where they were like turbo broken.
Right.
So yeah, I think that would maybe be my only concern, but I also think they get buffed by the time to kill adjustment. The longer a hunter can live, the more uptime they have on autos. The more uptime they have on autos, they'll kill everybody, So
right.
I think that goes in their favor with this patch.
Yeah, they also lost penetration on Hasten Fatalis. Its cost did go down. Its recipe shifted, increased attack speed from 25% to 30%, but losing pen is just such a big nerf.
I don't think it was an auto include in builds though, to be fair. Like, it was definitely really good, but I think like if you wanted crit, I think it was tough to go double crit. I believe like if you would go double crit Titans, XE, and then it was like Kins and Devs, that was like the build people were going.
Right. There is a core item that got removed its penetration. It's Soul Reaver. Also got a very different recipe, just lost the Void Shard out of the recipe. So now you have to sit on Oracle Staff for a ton of gold. Did increase the intelligence a bit, mana regen, but again, losing pen. Do I think Reaver is in the perfect spot now? No, I agree that just sitting on Oracle Staff probably isn't the best, and I imagine it's something we'll fix eventually, but this item's passive, also having pen, it was just, it couldn't remain that way forever, right? I feel like we all knew that. That's how
I actually thought it was perfect before, honestly. I thought
really?
the passive changes were... Yeah, I thought the passive changes were enough. I think, like, within... Like, obviously it was very strong, and you could maybe say it was, like, an auto-build item for anyone who was trying to do damage from, like, intelligence. And maybe, like, that's not what we want, necessarily, is having, like, auto-build core items that just stick around forever. And I could be sold on that. That's fair. But I think for how expensive it was, I think it did like the proper amount.
Sure. I think that's fair. And I think that we can bring some strength back. I just think maybe it's okay if it has pen. I don't know. I think it just felt a little too efficient at killing tanks with pen and a tank killing passive that I think I'd prefer. You have to get your pen from one source, and your Reaver passive will benefit from that down the line. But, it is what it is.
The way I gauge it is kind of like, if as a support, that's the one item I would build, like let's say I was Yamoja or something, if that was the one item I would build and that's all I need to do a ton of damage, then maybe you could say it's too strong. Maybe Yamoja's not the greatest because you can just spam proc everybody.
Sure.
And it definitely... It was that, but it wasn't. It's that in terms of like feel, like you get the proc numbers and it feels good. But after the most recent round of nerfs, if I wasn't hitting another tank especially, I was better off buying a different pen item that was also cheaper, which is why I thought for me it felt like it was in a better spot. But I wasn't building 80% pen, so I don't really know.
That is fair. Couple other items got shifts. Any of these changes jump off the page at you, Mike? Like Serrated, Berserkers, Glad Shield, Divine, any of that stuff?
The Berserkers change, I was surprised by. I didn't feel like it was really OP. I feel like this nerfed it a pretty significant amount, and I feel like it made it harder to build for the characters who would want it, like a Bologna. For example, I thought the Glad Shift, it looks really strong. I think there's definitely some characters that do very well with that. I think you mentioned Sobek, and I think trading 5 prots for 150 health, you'll do that every day of the week.
Of course.
So I thought that was really strong. The Totem nerf I thought was good. There was another one. Oh yeah, the Jotun's nerf. Yeah, no, it ruined my Emoja build. I can't do it anymore.
Yeah, Jotun's and Deso both going from 2 and 6 second reduction on kill to 1 and 5 for non-ultimate and ultimate.
Yeah, I don't know if it was good, but I was having so much fun. Like, going Deso wasn't as good on Umoja because it didn't have the base CDR. It had 5% pen instead of cooldown rate. So I would start games with starter, health chalice, and then tier 1 cooldown reduction, which would go into Jotuns. And then I would back, normally in duo, you back for your tier 2 at like 2 minutes. And I would back and I'd buy the 1,000 1,000 gold, 25 strength item, and I would just start slamming people with my autos. Like I was like out trading ADCs, and then you get Jotuns, and it's the same thing, and then you're all in is crazy. It was so much fun. Don't know if it was good, but it was fun.
It sounds fun. Yeah, that's the type of stuff the Smite 2 system lends itself to. Those little quirky builds, if you will. All right, those are the patch notes for 5.1 or 5.1. Closed off of 5.11.1, which is today. We do have to get to the random question of the week because Mike has got to play in the Smite Prime tournament here at 7, and I need to rearrange my life immediately. So it's time for our random question of the week, brought to you by our Patreon Discord, patreon.com/backliners if you want to get in on that. Seafog asks, what's your favorite Halloween costume you've put together?
It wasn't like special. The most nostalgic one was definitely when I was like a kid and the Star Wars movies were coming out.
Yeah.
And I was like 5 years old or something, being like, I don't know if I was a Jedi or not, but that was fun for sure. Because you're just walking around, big like bucket or bag of candy and then a lightsaber. Like that went pretty hard.
Yep, you're feeling good there.
No, that went crazy for sure. Especially because like there are a bunch of friends and kids in the neighborhood that would basically have the same thing, and like we will be lightsaber battling in the street, of course. Like,
of course,
you got to. That's dibs on the next house is whoever wins that. So that's the first one that comes to the top of my head for nostalgia.
That's a very good one. I definitely remember. Well, okay, I'm saying I definitely remember, but then I can't remember if it was kindergarten or first grade. I want to say it was kindergarten. I remember being so excited to go to school in my Buzz Lightyear costume that we got
at
like
owns.
Spirit.
That owns.
And it had the full, like, it wasn't like, you know, it was the early 90s, or I guess kindergarten, it would have been mid 90s. Like, it was like it was soft, but it had wings that came out. It came with like the purple skull cap. And I remember being so excited to wear that costume. And it was a hit, because of course it was. Like, Buzz Lightyear, still one of my favorite costumes ever. Last year when Joe, Calvin, and I did the Baby of the Year sketch from I Think You Should Leave, where I was Michael Patrick Porkins, Joe was Taffy Lee Fubbins, and Calvin was the bad boy of the competition, Bart Harley Jarvis. Like, you know that was him. So those are my two favorites for sure. Messi wants to know, is ketchup acceptable on a hot dog?
I feel like it's acceptable, but not preferable.
You know me.
The main one.
I don't want ketchup on nothing, ever. I'm a ketchup hater.
I agree with that.
It's just not that good, guys. It's just not.
Yep.
You think mustard is the preferred hot dog topper?
Yeah, I feel like if you polled people and it was, you can only have one topping on a hot dog, and you could add the like rest of your life thing if you wanted to make it more dire to make them really choose. I feel like mustard would be the most likely one.
I'm slamming cheese, and I'm loving every minute of it, baby. I'm a cheese dog.
Cheese is a wild card. Pittsburgh shit right there.
I love a cheese dog, bro. I gotta take you to my favorite hot dog shop here in Pittsburgh. It is a classic. Okay, Day adds the ketchup question. Are we dippers with ketchup, or do you just put it right on top of your food? Again, I apologize. I'm a neither. I don't put ketchup on anything. Yeah, I don't.
Yeah.
For hot sauce, I'd say I'm kind of split. Like for nugs, I'm dipping in hot sauce, but for like a sandwich, I'm gonna put it on it.
I'm literally just shotgunning the whole bottle of hot sauce.
I'm just cracking it open and getting in there.
Yeah. I feel like the ketchup thing. Do you not like? I think if I was like at a backyard grill, like people are just hanging out, like a 4th of July type thing, I want ketchup and mustard on my cheeseburger or hamburger or whatever I'm having. I feel like that's the main time I want ketchup, and I feel like that's it for me.
Nope, not me. I want my ketchup.
Not even in that scenario. That's crazy.
No, I'm not putting anything on my.
I'm a ketchup hater, but like you've like made it go extinct.
No, I'm willing to go with the dry burger if I need to in this scenario. Like, and it's always a risk in the backyard because you can get some real dry burgers out there, but in that situation,
just the phrase "dry burger" is making me upset.
I gotta do it to them. I'll go lettuce. I'll go tomato. I'll go one thick raw onion on there. Loving that. But
tomatoes enough for the wetness though. That's fine.
Sure. Yeah. I'd love to have, especially if it's like a garden tomato. Oh yeah, a homegrown tomato, so much better than store-bought tomatoes. They should really come up with a tomato that travels well. Has anyone thought of that? Is that a good business idea? A tomato that doesn't taste bad after it's been put in a grocery store.
A tomato that doesn't spoil.
Is this anything? Okay. This reminds me, I've got a great bit that Sam and I had that we might have time for, we might not. Messi has another question. How do you feel about franchises making crossovers? Example, the Avatar skins. Do you feel it takes away from the original IP of a franchise, or is it just how things are these days? I have an immediate thought, because it's been a hot topic in the Magic the Gathering community, as they have certainly ramped up their IP crossovers, and before it was little secret layers, which are just like 5 special printings of an already existing card, or sometimes a brand new card, but it's relatively rare. Now there will be like a standard legal, so like the main way to play the game for new players, Spider-Man set coming out like next year or something like that for Magic. That's their plan moving forward, is that the universes beyond, is what they call crossovers, will be integrated into their usual play patterns and take over the spot of other Magic sets. I am generally very pro crossover, the Avatar skin, stuff like that. Having an occasional type of theme break, I don't view as a big problem. I think it's very additive and very cool. I do disagree with the direction that Magic is taking, where it is explicitly taking away from the usual setting and usual feel that people are expecting from the game. Now, that's the case for all of them. Like, this is not revealing some big secret that if we didn't do the Avatar skins, whatever patch they came out, we would have had more skins that we made, right? But there's a difference between total replacement of a set, like what Magic has, and a subset of 5 skins or whatever it may be. So I'd say generally for it, not a fan of how Magic is going about it right now currently.
The Magic thing is interesting. I wasn't aware of that. I was curious what you were going to say, because I instantly thought that I would dislike that. Because I feel like it's almost immersion breaking. Like I feel like there's something about Magic, especially if you're playing it in person, that it's like maybe not necessarily like that universe or that lore, but like that style and like that theme of like what's going on, and like the different colors kind of dictating like the feel of everything. And I feel like trying to mold a different universe into that is really, really difficult. Whereas in a game like Smite or whatever else where it's skins, it's just like purely cosmetic, right? Like you're not making Aang the character, you're making an Aang skin for a character that fits him well, which would be Merlin. So like when you play it, it's kind of like you're merging two things that ideally people like both, and then it feels kind of cool, and it kind of feels like a nostalgic like callback to that other thing,
Right.
rather than it taking over and being intrusive.
Right. Yeah, I agree. I mean, like when Magic did a Lord of the Rings set that was going to be modern legal, like it's like, okay, it's a little weird, but it's like it's Lord of the Rings. Like it's so
I could see Lord of the Rings
right there. You know what I mean? It's like the exact same type of setting of the overall like most common Magic sets. And I love Spider-Man. Spider-Man's my favorite superhero, my favorite comic. Like I love Spider-Man. I just don't need it in my organized play for Magic. Like I don't need to worry about countering a Doc Ock. Like I just don't. That's not what I'm really that interested in. I don't want Miles Morales owning me in a tournament, in a Magic tournament. I'm not like, there are a lot of people like, oh, Magic's dead. It's like typical online discourse. Like I'm not there. I'm not going to stop playing Magic because of it. I'm not going to stop engaging with it. I just kind of wish they hadn't done that, And that's
I do
that's
feel like it
extremely...
diminishes the old value a little bit, like the old value of cards a bit.
Well, yeah, but
maybe not. But
it does. But that all new card releases do, right? That's just kind of like
I guess
inevitable.
that's true.
Like that's just the way of the game. It is just sad when you see in real time a parent corporation, in this case Hasbro, looking at something that you love and going, that could make way more money than it's making right now. Like, we could be making even more money on this, right? Like that's just never a good feeling.
Yeah. I mean, the hope with crossover is as well, which is like ultimately the whole reason companies do them, aside from the obvious like make more money, is to bring in like different audiences, right?
Yes.
So I feel like from that perspective, there can be like maybe like somewhat like it's like justified. I don't know what phrase I want to use, so I just stuttered there. No problem.
Sure.
Yeah, I feel like the good can maybe outweigh the potential downsides. It's just hard to really see that before it happens, and I think knowing your audience and knowing what risk is worth taking is probably an important one. And I feel like if I was on the Magic team, I don't know if Spider-Man fits that theme. Like you could sell me on when you said Lord of the Rings, I'm like, oh, I could see that, or I could see like I've
got my playset of One Rings right here. They're right next to me.
Yeah, like I could see WoW. Like WoW would cross over with it really well. It's like any fantasy universe.
Yep. Yeah.
You could sell me on Zelda.
I'm gonna play the Spider-Man set. I know I will. Like, there's no point in pretending I'm not gonna. All right, and then last question for the week from Shadowfax: what class do you prefer to play in RPGs/D&D?
Depends on the vibe, surely.
That's a good answer.
I like playing. Okay, I think magic, like spell casting of any sort, is just cool. It's a coin flip on if I want to be, evil or good, within that spectrum. But I feel like any sort of like mage always gets me. Any sort of paladin is cool to me. I like being tanks and healers, or I like throwing a lot of lightning and fire.
Yes,
that's
yes. That's the number one thing to think about. If you can do cool lightning stuff, that's the coolest thing you can be doing. Lightning's the coolest element. It's the coolest thing to do in all cases. That being said,
Spellblade classes are cool too, though.
Yes,
magic stealth combo, that is cool.
Yes, completely agree. I've done 3 D&D campaigns, and the one I definitely played the most of, I was an Aarakocra monk. Aarakocra are like bird people. That was very, very fun. I typically am going mostly like melee in general, I think, in most games, which is weird because, you know, in Smite, I was a mid player. But I've often said that in other games, I don't really play the like mage style nuke DPS type classes. I like playing like bruisers. I like playing hybrid tanks, or like spellblade classes. But if you're telling me that I can summon like a massive thunderbolt, lightning bolt, of course, or like chain lightning people, like I'm gonna want to do that. That's what I'm going to want to be doing at all points. Yeah. All right, that's it for our random question of the week. Big shout out to our patrons. Thanks for hopping in. All right, sorry for the shorter episode this week and for the weird time, but that's just kind of how it fell. We will be back next week. We will have a show on Tuesday, I believe. It will be me and Inbound. I don't know what we'll talk about. Maybe I'll just make fun of him the whole time. Something to think about. Always could do that. Mike, thanks for hopping on the show. If you're watching live, Mike, you're going live right after this to play in the Smite Prime tournament. Is that correct?
No Smite Prime this week, unfortunately. And we're all devastated. We were on a title defense. And it feels like the system's against us, to be honest with you.
That is tough. Yep. Well, you know, Mike's streaming a lot these days, so make sure you check out his Twitch, twitch.tv/PBM Smite. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Nice. I'm being told you're going to heroic raid. Is that the case?
I'll do whatever. You know, I've been playing some WoW lately as well, and it's just, you know, there's been a war within, and someone's got to save it. You know, someone's got to save the world, and I'll do that. If I need to do it, I'll do it. Azeroth
needs you desperately, Mike. There's no doubt about that. Okay, big shout out to Turtle Beach, the new sponsor for today's episode. Again, turtlebeach.com/backliners. You get 10% off your order. Big shout out to them. We'll be back next week. Mike, you got to do the whole buy thing, you know, like Barry normally does. You can put your own spin on it, but someone's got to say buy, is all I'm trying to say.
You know, just wanted to echo everything.
By the way, Mike.
Huh?
Or I've lost you. One or the other.
Yeah, no, I think
okay, I've lost you, but the stream can hear you, as I can tell.
Oh.
So here's what we're going to do. I'm just going to trust that you're going to throw some spin on this, and I'm not going to know what you're saying. And it's going to be fun. So until next time, we'll see you then. Mike, you know what to do.
All right, everyone, like, comment, subscribe, whatever you got to do, or I will not feed my cats. If you do not support the channel or the stream, they will not get fed. They're really hungry right now. Someone's got to do it. Bye.